Mike Kehoe said, well, tell me, John, really, you were in the State Senate, I'm in the State Senate, you were chairman of Transportation Committee, I'm chairman of Transportation Committee. How's Roy Blunt really doing? I said, he is principled, he is determined, he is courageous. Ladies and gentlemen, you have sent to Washington an incredible United States Senator in Roy Blunt. And he won the way that you win these races. He went to 114 counties at the big bus, Roy on the side. And he did it the right way because Roy listens. He listens to people. He doesn't lecture, he listens. He continues to be a strong voice for the conservative movement, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to work with him. Now, on the way in, someone said, well, why did we lose these elections this year? Is there any future for the Republican Party? And to quote that great Missourian Mark Twain, reports of our death are greatly exaggerated. But Roy and I are not going to spend our time wringing our hands or licking our wounds. We are completely engaged in the fight. There is a lot to be happy about. 30 governors right now are Republican governors around the country. 27 state legislatures are controlled by the Republican Party. And when we talk about the upcoming Senate races in 2014, 6 of them where Democrats are up are in states where Barack Obama had 42% of the vote or less. And we are going to be very competitive in each and every one of them. And who would have ever thought that Michigan, of all places, is now a right-to-work state? And when the Democrats look to their bench for the year 2016 for president, you're talking about either 69-year-old Hillary Clinton or 73-year-old Joe Biden. Our candidate, you will know, is going to be from a new generation, whether it's Paul Ryan talking about the aspirations and anxieties of American families and focusing on growth and opportunity and earned success, whether it's Bobby Jindal, who's going to be here tomorrow, talking about the Democrats as a party of getting things from government, and the Republicans as the party for opportunity and the economy. And he's going to talk about ways that we as Republicans want to grow the pie, and the Democrats as ways that just want to slice those pieces a little bit smaller and smaller and smaller, and then take most of your pie. And that's what you're going to hear tomorrow. And then we have Marco Rubio. He gave absolutely a wonderful, I believe, full-throated defense of limited government conservatism in his response to the president's speech. As he said, the president is obsessed with hiking taxes, and he went on to say, more government isn't going to help you get ahead, it's going to hold you back. So here we are, right after the second inauguration of this president, after the State of the Union, and I think Tom, our auditor, mentioned Lincoln's second inaugural address, where he talked about malice toward none, charity for all. What we saw in this inauguration was an absolute attack in an effort to demonize the Republican Party, to delegitimize us as a party, and to try to destroy us in his goal, as Roy said, to have the last 2 years of this administration be equal to the first 2 years, and we must do everything we can conceivably do to help elect Jason and make sure that the president cannot take back the House of Representatives. In the State of the Union, we saw a laundry list of his so-called investments. And the big laugh line of the night, I don't think he intended it as a laugh line, but we were all laughing. Roy and I were laughing along with John Thune and Mitch McConnell when the president said, nothing I'm proposing tonight should increase our deficit by a single dime. We're still waiting for his budget, and we haven't seen it yet. You know, the president believes, and he kind of continues to make the case, if you just give us a little more of your money and you give us a little more of your freedom, well, then your lives will be made that much better. I know that the people in this room tonight will not be deceived. Roy mentioned Ronald Reagan's inaugural address in 1981. That's the time, about 10 minutes after he took the oath of office, he said, "Government is not the solution to our problems. government is the problem. And the thing you gotta love about that guy, you just gotta remember, because it was right here in Missouri where he delivered that knockout punch to Walter Mondale. Were you there at that debate? I mean, that was the time when he said, "I will not make age an issue with this campaign. I'm not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience." The election was over at that moment. Ronald Reagan knew it. We know it. Government should stand at our sides and not ride on our back. Is there a role for government? Yes, but it's a limited role. Government should be a supporting role, not the main actor. And as I continue to say, as I go to Lincoln Day dinners all around Wyoming, my home state, you cannot be, and this is a quote of Reagan, you cannot be for big government, big regulations, and big taxes, and still be for the little guy. So we will continue to fight this battle. Now, I remember a time similar to this, and I was here in St. Louis in 1993. It was the week after Bill Clinton had been sworn in, and we were here trying to select and elect a new Republican national chairman. John Ashcroft was in the race, some others, and Haley Barbour was the one that won the race. And Haley has continued to say, and has done it now for the last 20 years, when you're talking with voters, you got to make sure, and Tom, our auditor, talked about that, and so did our gubernatorial candidate, you want to be respectful, you want to be positive, you want to be inclusive, because politics is all about addition and multiplication. And we're dividing ourselves, we're subtracting, we're losing, or as Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We're in Missouri, but two of the Lincoln-Douglas debates happened basically very close to Missouri, and I would imagine that some of the ancestors of the people here were actually at those debates. One's in Quincy, the one in Alton, where the president said in 1858, "Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed." Or as Margaret Thatcher said, who came here in 1996 to Missouri to celebrate the 50th anniversary of at Westminster College of the Iron Curtain speech by Winston Churchill, she said, "First you win the argument, then you win the vote." And we are now focused specifically on winning the argument, winning the message, talking to the American people in a way they can identify with, and seeing the benefits of what we are proposing. Now, the best professor I ever had through medicine in my training was a guy from St. Louis who I met in the 1980s, and his name was Armin Brodeur. You may have listened to him over the years on KMOX radio station 1120. What he was doing in radio here, I was doing in radio in Wyoming. You know, he was a pediatric radiologist, and he used to say you can do more with a smile than you can do with penicillin. And he said the way to stand tall with children is down on your knees. And that's the way you get people. He said, you know what radio station people are always listening to? I said, KMOX in St. Louis? He said, no, WIFM, what's in it for me? And that's what people listen to and what they're concerned about. And that's why Roy is so good, as he listens to people. What are they concerned about? What does it mean to their lives? How does this impact their ability to raise their children, put bread on the table? And Armin was remarkable about that. I mean, this is a guy that became very famous here in St. Louis. David Letterman Show, Time Magazine, you name it. Kind of reminded me of the Norman Rockwell painting of the doctor and doll, the guy listening to the baby with the stethoscope. And I learned a lot from him about trying to give people health information, but it's the same thing with political information. He said, if you're going to tell somebody to quit smoking, you can't say, I'm a doctor, you better quit smoking. He'd say, you should say, what does it benefit to you if you quit smoking? Why would it matter to you? Well, you're going to save money, you're going to live longer, your family, all those reasons. So I took from him that lesson, and I did television health reports and radio reports, and at the end of it, I would always say, here in Wyoming, I'm Dr. John Barrasso, helping you care for yourself. And to me, that's a Republican message, giving information people can use to stay healthy, keep down the cost of their own care. Because one of the things that we learned in medical school, and then when we took the Hippocratic Oath after graduation, was first do no harm. And I will tell you, I believe that this healthcare law is going to harm all of America. First of all, it was too long. James Madison, the father of the Constitution, said, "Pass no law so voluminous it cannot be read, nor so incoherent it cannot be understood." Well, some of us read it, but of course, if you listen to Nancy Pelosi, she said, first you have to pass it before you get to find out what is in it. But the fundamental lines were those of the president's. I think intentionally designed to deceive the American people, where he said, if you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. Nothing is further from the truth. And right after you passed on August 3rd, 2010, by 71%, to say to Washington, no, you cannot make the people of Missouri buy a government-mandated product. I went to the Senate floor, as did Roy, to share that news with the world. Because people needed health care reform. Let's face it, people want the care they need from a doctor that they choose at lower cost. But now that you learn more and more about the health care law, let's just do a show of hands. How many here believe that under this health care law, you will be paying more for your health insurance than you would have instead of the law? Every hand goes up. Now, how many of you believe that you, as a result of the health care law, will have lower quality and less availability of health care as a result of the health care? That's exactly right. This law, it may not be unconstitutional, but it is unworkable, it is unaffordable, and it continues to be very unpopular. It is bad for patients, it's bad for providers, the nurses and the doctors who take care of those patients, and it's terrible for the American taxpayers. Now, the president promised that, that by the end of his first term, health care prices would drop by insurance $2,500 a year. What we know the most recent statistics are that they've actually gone up about $3,100 a year, so a net flow of over $5,000, $5,600 per family. The president said we won't raise any of your taxes. Well, they actually raised 21 taxes, so premiums are up. We know that 7 million Americans are going to lose coverage as a result of that. The president said he wanted to cover everyone. If you're on Medicare, it is going to get harder and harder to find a doctor to take care of you. They do have a rationing board. The president says no, 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 but absolutely they do. Bureaucrats making healthcare decisions, and then there are incentives in the law, and they say, well, this is to improve quality. One of the things they're doing is to tell hospitals, we will give you bonuses if your average bill for Medicare patients is lower. So if you're running a hospital, you're in a hospital board, and you say, well, what's the best way to do that? Oh, I know. Stop doing artificial hips, stop doing artificial knees, and close down your cardiac cath lab, which is horrible for rural hospitals all around my state of Wyoming and your state of Missouri. There's a new device tax that's going up. They have used so many accounting tricks, budget gimmicks, double counting. And yet, last week, Roy, the Congressional Budget Office, the scorekeeper on this, said, guess what? It's going to be even more expensive than we thought at first. So how do people deal with this? Well, if you're a small business, you have to start getting penalized or provide insurance if you have over 50 employees. Instead of doing what Americans do, which is hire more people and put people back to work, you're going to put a ceiling there. You're not going to hire people above that. And now you have to provide those for full-time employees, and they define full-time as 30 hours per week. And businesses are now saying, well, then we're going to hire fewer people and limit them to 29 hours a week. And then you don't have to provide the health care, which is very, very expensive. Because you can't just get the health insurance that actually the workers and you and your family want, is right for you, and you can afford. Oh no, you have to buy Barack Obama approved health insurance, which is much more expensive than anything that you might want, you might need, or might do you good. And these are the problems with this health care law, which is why we continue to fight it. So the city of Chicago looked at this and said, oh my goodness, Rahm Emanuel, who was the guy behind the closed doors writing the law, he said, we can't handle this for our employees, for the retired city workers, it'll bankrupt us. So he had an idea. He said, we'll dump them on the exchange and let the rest of the taxpayers in the country pay for them. And the unions who supported this, you remember them, they're the ones, we need Obamacare, we love Obamacare. Well, now they finally looked at this and said, oh my goodness, we can't afford it. It's going to make us less competitive. So now they're against it. They're the ones that lobbied the hardest for it. So what happens? What is the result? They said, we know. We'll go ask our friend President Obama to give us a subsidy, which is, of course, illegal. But one of the spokesmen of the union said, well, the White House has promised to find a loophole. Ladies and gentlemen, this is awful. Our concerns are that what they're trying to do is let this system fail, so that then they can force a British-style or Canadian-style health care on the American people, and we will fight it every step along the way. I was talking about this in Wyoming, and somebody who is not, Barack Obama, I think, got like 28% of the vote in Wyoming, so he's not very popular, but someone came up to me and said, you know, you don't sound like you're very patriotic after talking about the health care law. And it takes me back to Mark Twain, who said, patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it, and our government does not deserve support. I could go on really for another hour and a half, and I better not do that. But I wanted to say, I had a great time tonight visiting people. I met Kathy Chin, the president of the Missouri Federation of Republican Women. Thank you very much, Kathy, for what you're doing with all of the Republican women in this state. As you know, she's a farmer. And I hope some of you had a chance to see the Super Bowl ad by Dodge Truck about God Made a Farmer by Paul Harvey. On the 8th day, God looked down, just a little excerpt from it, God looked down on his planned paradise and he said, I need a caretaker, so God made a farmer. And you think about what we do in our lives, all of us, had to be somebody who plowed deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and break and disc and plow and plant, so God made a farmer. So here we are in the middle of the fight. As Ann said, the fight goes on. And as Margaret Thatcher said to George Bush, the first George Bush, she said, George, don't go wobbly on me. We are not about to go wobbly on anyone. They called her the Iron Lady, and tonight we are joined by another great lady who once said, the United States is a giant island of freedom, achievement, wealth, and prosperity in a world hostile to our values. Phyllis Schlafly, it is a delight to be with you this evening. As Lincoln said, I'm not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. And as we talked about, Jason, in your district, in Cape Girardeau, that's where the fundamental difference in the decisions that this country is facing were made by Ronald Reagan in 1988. And he was at Cape Girardeau, and he said, ultimately the choice before the American people is the choice between two visions. He said, on one hand, the policies of limited government, economic growth, strong defense, and firm foreign policy. On the other hand, policies of tax and spend, economic stagnation, internal weakness and accommodation, and always, always from them, blame America first. He said it is the choice between the policies of liberalism or the policies of America's political mainstream. It carried the day then for Ronald Reagan, and it will carry the day for us right now. Or as Yogi Berra said, another guy from St. Louis, it ain't over till it's over. Well, I wanted to just take a final second to thank all of you for allowing me to be here. In Wyoming, we have something called the Code of the West. And it is actually our state code, and about 10 of them, but one is live each day with courage, take pride in your work, know where to draw the line. And my dad was one of these guys who was in World War II. He fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and I've talked to some folks here tonight whose parents were in World War II. Didn't have an education, had to quit school in 9th grade because of the Depression. He was a cement finisher. He wanted his kids to get an education. And from the time I was a little boy, he would always say, John, you should thank God every day because you live in America. You don't know how fortunate you are. And that's exactly where I draw the line. So for the Missouri Republican Party, I'm Dr. John Barrasso, helping you care for yourself.